right, welcome. It's page 160 in your packet. And, there's a lot of words here, but you're going to need this information to answer the following questions. So, just be aware that here it is, all your information. Fantastic, great. Depending on what order you're watching the videos, if you've already done one margin of error video, I recommend that you try to do this yourself and come back and then watch, hit pause, try it yourself. If this is your first one, then obviously you're going to want to kind of go with it and check it out before you try to do it on your own. Anyway, enough of me yambling. So, the population represented by this poll. So, population implies all of somebody. So, when we look back to this screen, you see right here, it says percents of all teens 13 to 17. So, our population is all teens 13 to 17. Now, realistically speaking, can you talk to all teens that are 13 to 17? No. So the population references all the people that you're pulling from. So all the teens 13 to 17 are possible for my data. Sample size are the people that you actually talk to. So when you look down here, you see it says N equals 1060. N represents sample size. So my sample size is 1,060 that are teens 13 to 17. We're still staying in that same age group. Now, the 95% confidence margin of error. In this class, right, we're only dealing with 95%, and we are dealing with an estimate. The estimate formula is 1 over the square root of n, remembering that n is your sample size found up top here. So we'll take 1 over the square root of 1060, and you're going to want to make sure that you do this correctly in your calculator. And if you can find the square root of 1060 first, you get about 32.56, or you can type it in all at the same time. But either way, we get an answer of approximately 3%. So this is, which way it could go. The average for this class is 75%, give or take 3%, right? Plus or minus 3%. That's the margin of error. It gives yourself some leeway, the allowable difference from the estimate. So we want to calculate the confidence interval for the proportion of teens who use Facebook. So if I give you whiplash and go back, here's Facebook right here. So that means my estimate is 71%. So the confidence interval is your estimate plus or minus your margin of error. And we just found our margin of error to be 3%. So if I take 71 and I subtract 3, and then I take 71 and I add 3, my 95% confidence interval is 68% to 74%. And now I write a statement. And these statements are very much, in my personal opinion, they're like Mad Libs, right? So we start, we are 95% confident, and we get that from the confidence interval. 95% confident, what are we confident about? Well, we're confident that 68% to 74% of who? Well, remember we talked about of teens 13 to 17. That's the population. So 95% confident, then we have our confidence interval. Who are we talking about of teens 13 to 17? And then the last piece, what did they do? Well, they use Facebook. So we can be confident, 95% confident, that 68 to 74% of teens between the ages of 13 and 17 use Facebook. That's all we're saying. But it's very nice, right? 95% confident, confidence interval, then your population, and what did they do? All right, let's go on to page 161. And I would like you to try this one. Answer as many as you can, A through F, and then come back and watch. So, all right, part A. What is the population? Well, you can see after you read all this, it says random sample of 1,527 adults age 18 and older living in the 50 U.S. states and D.C. So when we talk about the population, remember the population starts with all. So all adults aged 18 and older, and you should put living in the 50 U.S. states plus D.C. You should have all of it because they are being very specific, so you should be very specific. And then what about the sample? Well, the sample is the number. So 1527 adults aged 18 plus living in the 50 states plus DC, right? Be specific. Estimate the margin of error. Well, once again, the margin of error is 1 over the square root of n. And in this case, n is our sample size, which is 1527. So when I do that, I get 0.026 or 2.6%. So what about the confidence interval? Well, if you go back to the problem, you see that most of the U.S. say they are proud to be an American, including a slight majority, 54%, who say they are extremely proud. That doesn't really answer this question. Because it just says proud. It doesn't say extremely proud. But that's what they give us because the 70 tells us that's what it was old, but we're dunking new. So we're going to use 54% because that's what we have. Okay, so 54% plus or minus 2.6%. So again, you subtract to go to the left, which gives me 51.4%. And you go to the right, you add it to the right, 56.6%. And here's my 95% confidence interval. So when I write my statement, I start with, we are 95% confident. Then I go to my interval. That 51.4% to 56.6% of who? Of, oh my gosh, of American adults age 18 and over, living in the 50 states, blah, 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 blah. And what do? They are proud to be, I spelled proud wrong, proud to be an American. That's a long sentence, but lots of details, right? You got to have them all. 95% confident, you got your confidence interval, who you talking about, and what are they talking about, right? Now, in letter F, can it be concluded that most Americans are proud to be an American using this poll? Well, remember that most, we're splitting hairs here, but most implies greater than 50%. 51% is most, right? It's a majority. So when you're looking for most, you've got to look at the entire confidence interval, and in this case, it's 51.4% to 56.6%. The entire interval has to be above 50%. And if you look at our entire interval, it's all above 50%. So in that case, the answer is yes, because the entire interval is above 50%, and therefore the entire interval is a majority. Even on the low end, we expect them to be proud to be an American. Moving on to number 15. We've got a following table. They talked to 1,000 registered voters who asked what candidate they were going to vote for. All right, so by how many percent, this is more about polls, by how many percentage points does Sunny lead Lady? Well, 48.4 minus 46.8. Sunny leads Lady by 1.6 percentage points. It's not very much. It's right there. It's pretty close. So let's find the margin of error. And remember, the margin of error is 1 over the square root of n. And in this case, it told us we talked to 1,000 people. So that gives us 0.03, which is approximately 3%. Okay? So that means that we could be off one way or the other by 3%. So could you pick a winner? Well, we just said that, okay, so the top two are separated by 1.6 percentage points. But we have a margin of error of 3%. So Sunny, if you take away 3%, he could be at 45.4%. And if you give 3% to Lady, she could be at 49.8%. Lady could win by 4.4% and still be within, normal circumstances here. So no, based off this data, we cannot, because the margin of error is greater than the difference between the candidates. And what proportion of votes can Pot expect to get? Well, Pot's at 2.7. So 2.7, and then we got a plus or minus 3%. Now we're talking about votes. If you subtract 3 from this, you get negative 0.3. Can you have a negative percent in terms of votes? No. The smallest number of votes you can get is 0, right? That's a nobody votes for you. So if you subtract, it can't be negative, so it would be 0 to 5.7 is the votes that Pot can expect to get. Probably not going to win. Probably not. Okay, that's margin of error in the book. That's page 161. Let me know if you have questions. Bye.